Well, welcome back, Blue Jackets fans, to On the Bench with Columbus Wire TV. And I would now like to welcome in our Blue Jackets expert, Dave Seaman. And Dave, it's hard to believe that the season is already over for the Columbus Blue Jackets. It ended on a loss, but with that, I would like to get just your overall reaction to the season as a whole.
Well, it's funny. It just seems like yesterday we were outside the arena getting ready to do the season preview and talk about the excitement and talk about what we thought was going to be a playoff push. And, you know, up until 6 weeks ago, that was still a reality. I mean, we thought that this was going to be a playoff team or a team that was going to contend for a playoff spot. And, you know, just the wheels kind of fell off the last 6 weeks of the season. And, you know, here we are for the ninth time in 10 years. We're done. And 16 teams are about to go on and battle for Lord Stanley Cup. And unfortunately, you know, the Blue Jackets are not one of them.
Well, you had mentioned the Blue Jackets were actually in the playoff hunt, I think, for a bit longer than people actually expected, and then the end, they just kind of fizzled out. So with that, there has to be some positives and negatives. So what are some of your highlights and lowlights to this season?
Well, I mean, you know, it was an up and down year, like we said. I mean, you know, I think one of the crutch words we used all season long was consistency. The Blue Jackets were not a consistent hockey club this year. Let me throw some numbers at you here. The Jackets started the season 14-6. Franchise record for the best start, the fastest start. At Thanksgiving, they were tied with Detroit with the best record in the Western Conference. And going into Thanksgiving weekend, we're battling Detroit for first place. So that's a positive. You know, back during that stretch, they went out and they beat LA, Anaheim, and San Jose on a road trip. That's the first time in franchise history that's happened. And it's only happened 7 or 8 times since the lockout.
Right.
I mean, so that's a positive. The Jackets end the season with the most wins or points on the road. They had their best road record in franchise history this year. I mean, so again, you're looking at some positives. You know, when we talked about being out or in or out of the playoff hunt, you know, on February 28th at the trade deadline, the Jackets were only 2 points out of the playoffs. You know, and this is after being tied for first place, after having a horrible December, and then they came back in January and February, played very well, and at the trade deadline, 2 points out. Scott Hauser made a blockbuster trade, bringing in energy guys that we thought would help.
Right.
Then we talk about the negatives.
Right.
And, you know, the glaring stat, the Jackets went 6-14-3 from Thanksgiving to the middle of January. They were able to rebound because they had time.
Right.
But then they end the season 3-12-7. They had one of the worst power plays in the league this year. You know, Steve Mason was very inconsistent. At one point, they shut him down for a week or two to try to get his game back. You know, so again, it goes back to consistency. I mean, when you think of lowlights of the season, you know, think about the Pittsburgh game back in December. You lost 7-2. It was like Consol Energy Center East. Because there were that many Pittsburgh fans here in Nationwide Arena. Think about late in the season, in the month of March. Detroit was here; it was half Detroit fans. You know, Buffalo in the season finale, it was half Buffalo fans. Chicago was here late in the season. It was the same thing. The only way the Jackets are going to prevent that from happening is win.
All right, well, the 2011-2012 Columbus Blue Jackets roster has the chance to look completely different. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, something has to give. I mean, you know, Scott Hauser in the last two off seasons since the playoff year has done virtually nothing. You know, as far as adding major pieces to the puzzle. Yeah, he's made
goal scorer.
The goal scorer.
Right.
That's something that the Jackets desperately need. You know, we've said this before. It sounds like a broken record. When Rick Nash is not the top player on this team, or when you have an equal, this team's going to be successful. Let me give you a list of the players that could or couldn't be back. Unrestricted free agents: Chris Clark, Grant Klitzum, Matthew Garon, Jan Hayda, Ethan Morrow, Andrew Murray, Scotty Upshaw, Craig Rivet. Okay, restricted free agents: Scotty Lapista, Mark Mathot, Anton Strawman, and Jake Voracek. So there's a lot of players. Now, your core is intact. You know, your core players are still signed. And I think that's the core. Those are the people that are going to help you build. You've got to change the culture of this team. You've got to change the role players. And quite frankly, Scott Hausen's got to rebuild this defense.
Right. Well, Dave, we look forward to your continued Blue Jackets coverage through the draft and the offseason. So don't forget that Columbus Wire TV is your home for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Until next time, I am Ashliegh Ignelzi, and he's Dave Seaman.